Good morning. This is Lisa, the naturalist at John James Audubon State Park. Welcome to another edition of Wild Wednesday. Today I am at Audubon Wetlands. Since we're still practicing our social distancing and our stay-at-home orders are in place, I thought it might be nice if I gave you a virtual tour of Audubon Wetlands. In 2011, the Audubon Wetlands Group and the Friends of Audubon were instrumental in getting the money together to purchase this land, which has now become Audubon Wetlands. It is located off of Wolf Hills Road, which is the only road between Audubon State Park entrance and the twin bridges which cross over the Ohio River. If you turn east on Wolf Hills Road, you will come across our entrance here. By acquiring this land, we essentially doubled the size of Audubon State Park because the wetlands is an additional 649 acres. By definition, a wetland is a transitional area between dry land and deeper water, and there must be three conditions present. First of all, you have to have standing water either all or part of the time. There must be hydric soil, which is an oxygen-poor soil, and there must be hydrophytic plants, which are capable of tolerating a hydric soil. Audubon is a freshwater wetland which is frequently flooded by the Ohio River. There are actually three distinct areas here. We have a bald cypress swamp, a shrub wetland, and a floodplain forest. Sometimes when you visit a natural area like this, you don't always see wild animals. So you have to be a little bit of a nature detective and look for clues to see what animals are actually here. So as we walk along our trail today, I'm probably going to play nature detective and see what I can figure out from the clues that have been left behind. So let's start our walk. So as we're being a nature detective here, in the mud right in front of me, you can see kind of a trail. There's a lot of footprints in one area. And then if I go to the other side, you can also see a trail on this side of the road going right up past that tree. So we've got a little highway here. I wonder what animal's been using it. I do see lots of paw prints here. They look a lot like handprints, long fingers. What animal does that make you think of? There are a lot of footprints left in the mud. A lot of these appear to be probably the same animal. But what's interesting about following tracks is that you can kind of learn what animal it was just by the gait pattern that they have. Gait is the way that you move when you walk, and some animals will move in a certain way. Now as I come up here a little bit farther, I start to see a really good gait pattern. Right here I start to see two footprints together, again two footprints together, and as we go, two more, side by side. That gait pattern tells me what animal that was. I brought along a diagram of a very hand-like footprint, and this looks a whole lot like the footprints I've been seeing in the mud here and in that highway across the path. Who does it belong to? A raccoon. There is apparently a pretty big population of raccoons here at the wetlands, judging by how many of these little hand-like tracks I have seen. And once in a while we get lucky and see one of our herps here in the wetlands. This one is a nice sized snake. It's a copper-bellied water snake, and it is non-venomous. He's been holding very still, hoping that I didn't see him. They're called a copper belly because if you can look at this throat, it's a bright orange color. It's like a copper penny, and its belly is the same. This one's probably about 3 feet long. It's about average size for a copper belly. You might have seen him stick his tongue out there. Snakes, of course, basically taste the air with their tongue. That's how they're able to smell things around them. They use their noses to breathe air like you and I do. But when we breathe in, we also catch the scent that's floating around in the air. But they instead stick their tongue out, and the scent particles stick to their wet tongue. Then when they pull it back into their mouth, in the roof of their mouth, there are 2 holes, and inside those holes are what's called Jacobson's organ. And the forked tongue fits inside those 2 holes, and that enables the snake to figure out what's around it from the scent particles that were on its tongue. Ah, we have another herp. This is one of the many amphibians that we have. It's a tiny little cricket frog. We're coming up on a very special place in our wetlands. This boardwalk that you see is 750 feet long, and it will enable us to go out over the water. Oh, there's a nice fish in the water. Can you see it? 2 of them. They look like gar. We are out here on our boardwalk now, probably about in the middle. And as we look around, nearly all of these shrubs we see in the wetland are buttonbush, and they're just starting to sprout leaves. The wetlands was recently under floodwaters, so it's a little bit behind in getting the plants their growth for the season, but it'll catch up fast. I see something else, another clue. Yeah, that's scat on top of our boardwalk railing here. Scat is another name for animal droppings. Somebody had to go to the bathroom here. But guess who likes to put their scat on top of logs, or in this case, boardwalks? That same critter with the handprint, raccoon again. As we meet the end of our boardwalk here, we come up on a trail which will take you around our floodplain forest. This is part of the Big Island Loop Trail. And believe it or not, this section of our wetlands is an island. And if you see it from an aerial photo, it actually looks pretty close to what the shape of Kentucky is like. So we are going to head down this trail now. All along the path you can see our shrub wetlands still. Remember, it's an island, so we're surrounded by water. Oh, look. Let me zoom in. Maybe you'll see them. Look at that. We have a pair of Canada geese. Oh, look what I noticed on this tree here. Do you see the dark gray band against the different color part of the trunk there, and the tree behind it too? This area was all flooded, probably just last week. Whenever the Ohio River reaches 36 feet or above, then our wetland starts to flood. And actually that's what a wetlands is supposed to do, is hold the flood water. It kind of acts like a sponge and soaks it up and holds on to it, and then it gradually turns it loose again into the environment. And in the process of holding that water and then turning it loose, wetlands actually clean it. The sediment, the loose particles of dirt filter out, and even sometimes, like over here, some of our trash that ends up floating in our river will come in here to the wetlands and it gets deposited here. While that's not a great thing for our wetlands to be walking along and seeing trash, it is actually cleaning the water, because when this water goes back to the river, that trash is going to stay here. So wetlands have a very important function for us. As I was walking, I think I found another clue. Let's go look at it. Who is it that would be chewing on these trees? They're missing their bark. This one's almost cut down. And look at these smaller stumps here. They've been chiseled to a point, almost like sharpening a pencil. Do you know what creature lives here? You guessed it, the beaver. Well, here's another clue. I haven't seen this animal, I've heard it, but look what it did to this tree. There are holes in it now. What creature does that? That's right, a woodpecker. Well, we've made it back from our walk around the loop trail. Now it's back across the boardwalk. Oh, here's some different kinds of tracks. What has two toe-like impressions here? That walks in a straight line. That's right, these are deer tracks. Another thing to notice here in the wetlands is this mud tube here. It's actually called a chimney, and it's created by a crustacean. It's called a crayfish. Some people like to call it a crawdad. You'll find these tubes, they make these little mud balls as they're digging through the ground, and they come up and they form this long tube. And then sometimes it's not really a chimney that's built, but sometimes they leave it as a great big hole in the ground that they will climb in and out of. Usually it will connect with a nearby water source, so perhaps this stream over here is connected to this burrow. Now this is a deceased crayfish, which I happen to find partially buried in the mud here. If you find them in the water, they actually swim backwards because they use this tail to propel themselves backwards in very quick bursts. They are a favorite food of raccoons. I did see a couple of wildflowers in bloom too. Well, we made it back to the parking lot, but I've got one more thing to show you. Let's go. I wanted you to see one more place that is part of our wetlands, although you cannot hike there, but you can find a pull-out spot along Wolf Hills Road. You're looking at our cypress swamp. Those are bald cypress trees back there in the water. This is actually a site where we do have an active bald eagle nest and sometimes a great blue heron rookery. So our wetlands is truly a unique place. Thanks so much for taking the virtual tour with me today. Join me again next week for another edition of Wild Wednesday.